I've played these games before, and I don't want this to happen again. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And Season 2 is just a couple of weeks away from beginning. And in today's video, I wanted to cover some things that I think are really important for Blizzard to look at and to consider changing and or improving moving forward for Season 2, because I think it's going to be some startling results out of the first couple of things that we are going to be talking about. And if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. So one of the first things that I wanted to bring to attention is the number of accounts that have PvP rewards. So for example, the Gladiator mount. So there's a Forged Gladiator mount, which is the Forged Gladiator's Fellbat. And you can see that it is less than 1%. Less than 1% of the game has the Forged Gladiator's Fellbat, which is currently 2,400 rating and then winning 50 games above this cutoff. Now, the entire purpose of changing it from a percentage-based title and bringing it to 2,400 and giving it 50 wins was to make it a more accessible mount, so more players would actually have the ability and aspirations to actually go towards this mount and towards this achievement. And I think if it was still percentage-based, that it would actually be less people even have this mount than what it's currently listed at, which is now at 0.0368% of all accounts. And do note that we are getting into like the final weeks of the season. This is typically where inflation is going to peak at its highest margin, which would, likely stimulate a lot more players into this. And I'll be monitoring it through these couple of final weeks. But the biggest issue is that the rating on the ladder is determined by the number of people queuing the ladder. So it's basically just a game mode that eats itself. If people are quitting, then it's harder to get rating. And then if it's harder to get rating, and then more people are quitting. And then if more people are quitting, then it's even harder to get rating. So this system is just so flawed on so many levels that like this needs to get stripped out. It makes no sense to me that the rankings on the ladder is determined by the number of people playing the game. It doesn't make any, that would be like the amount of gains you get in the gym is determined by the number of people in the gym. It makes absolutely no sense to me. And I think that it's causing a huge drop off in participation, because when we take, this is the Gladiator reward, for PvP, they're adding an equivalent of it next season. The closest thing to it at the moment is a diamond mount from the Keystone Master, and it's 24% of all the accounts. Now, do know I think a lot more people PvE obviously than PvP, and it's possible also that the Diamond Mech suit is not faction specific, so both Horde and Alliance get the same mount, whereas the Forged Gladiator mount, I believe it's not faction specific. But the Vicious mount, when we look at it, it is faction specific, so that is likely skewing some numbers. But it's 24% of the accounts. So 24% of the accounts that are engaging with Mythic Plus are able to get like the kind of like, it's not the absolute pinnacle reward, right? Because the top percentage title would be. But I think for a lot of people, the mount is like a really big goal, right? It's either a transmog or a mount. Title is kind of okay. It's kind of for just the sweats. I think maybe some people would really like to go for it and they aspire to it. But I think the mount and the transmog is like the main incentivization package for those brackets and for those types of rewards. And this number being 24% is way higher, obviously. The next one is the Vicious Sky Flare. So you can see that it's Horde and Alliance. So you do need to add this up, right? Like it's 1% of the player base only on Horde, but then it's 2% on Alliance, and it's because they're separate mounts. But this seems really small to me, because to me, this mount should technically be easier to get than the Keystone Master mount, right? This is like the participation reward. You just get above 1,000 rating and earn conquest, win a certain amount of games or something like that, and you get this mount. Now, I think the main problem with this mount is that it was bugged or something and wins were not contributing to it. And maybe that actually had more impact on participation for PvP than anything, because if you went to the gym and the gym was bugged and you weren't getting your gains, for like 3 weeks at the gym, you'd be like, I'm done. I'm not going to the gym. My gains aren't coming in. So maybe this mount being bugged and the progress towards it was actually a big deterrent, because the percentage of players that have this mount is very small. This to me should be a much higher number. Again, I don't know what the exact numbers are, because I don't report the exact numbers on this type of stuff as to whether or not maybe 10% is a fair number, because overall accounts, right? Like I don't know even what the majority of accounts even engage in Mythic Plus. You know, maybe it's like 40% of the players don't even go into Mythic Plus or don't even go in PvP I don't know what those numbers are. But to me, 1%, 2% seems like a really low number. So hopefully it just means that it won't be bugged next season, and maybe that will have a big impact on the number of players that are actually able to get these mounts and these rewards. But if this number remains low and it's not bugged, then it perhaps needs to be shifted away. I understand their logic for it is like get 1,000 rating, which is, I would say, attainable for pretty much anybody. And then just, win games above 1,000 rating, because otherwise you might just be deliberately lowering your rating to try and get the mount. There's ways to kind of gimmick and cheese to get a participation reward in PvP that would be, degenerate gameplay for most players in the bracket. But to me, these numbers just seem really small. Like this is the participation PvP mount, and it's as rare as the gladiator mount, and the gladiator mount is ridiculously rare. So like, I just feel like something's got to shift around as far as these are the main attractions. Like whenever I've seen new players try PvP, like I saw Taliesin and Evitel, they have a YouTube channel, and Taliesin tried PvP because he liked the vicious hippo mount in BFA, and it got him to try PvP, and he actually had fun doing it because the mount incentivized him to try and do it. So if this mount cannot be bugged, and it needs to participation in this bracket towards this mount needs to not be bugged, needs to be credited. I think it was Battleground Blitz. I think Battleground Blitz is like the main thing that needs to be looked at, universally changing the MMR so it makes sense with the rest of the game. I don't understand how some players are 4,000 rated in Battleground Blitz right now, and then the highest solo shuffle players are like 2,800 rating. Those numbers just seem really off, and I see a lot of players are really confused about how like their MMR can go up like 400 points, but they can only ever gain 10 to 20 actual current rating. It just seems really off and not in line with any of the other brackets. And I don't know if that was to incentivize more play, but I think that it's actually disincentivized play because people got the rating too easily. They got to the elite set and then they just stopped. And then the vicious mount being bugged, people just stopped because they weren't getting credit towards it. So to me, these are like really big things that need to be considered, discussed about, looked at, and talked about. What is an appropriate amount? Like to me, this should be, I would see it like 25%. Like it should be at least the same as the Keystone Master mount. And then when we see this new mount that's coming in for Mythic Plus, which is more, I would say, closely tied to the difficulty level of Gladiator, it's really tough to obviously compare these two, but they're adding a second mount for Mythic Plus that's at a higher level of difficulty of Keystones, which does kind of hold some similarities to what the Gladiator mount would be. And when we see those numbers, what's the percentage? What's the fair point? Because obviously you want a mount to be prestigious, but to me, like 0.036%, bro, is like, that's like really low. That's like really low. Like that's really low. I feel like it could definitely be bumped up a bit more from that. And it's such a big thing, right, for a lot of players to get Glad. I don't want the prestige taken away from it because a lot of people like the challenge of it. It's a big thing for them when they're able to get it. It just seems like the numbers are off at the moment. And I think it's due to the first point that I made, that the inflation system just makes no sense, that the ladder is easier to climb when there's more people playing on the ladder. It just isn't. I want that entire system just ripped out. I mean, I doubt that that's going to happen, but maybe they should be careful if they have any manual numbers on adjusting MMR and inflation and not hit it so hard, because my expectation is that this season is going to start. We're resetting inflation down to where it was at the beginning of the first season, which is going to be really low. People are going to be like, wait, I'm 1,600? I was just playing at 2,100. What's going on? I've lost 500 rating. I'm playing 500 rating lower than I was just a week ago at the end of season 2. And then they're going to leave because it doesn't make sense to them, because it doesn't make sense. And then they're going to leave. And then because they leave, then the inflation gets even lower. And then there's going to be more people that are like, man, I'm really stuck. Like I stuck it around. I thought I could get better. Maybe something changed. My class is different, but like I'm really stuck. And now I can't climb at all. I'm gone, dude. Like I'm going to leave. And then guess what? The rating stagnates even more. And it's like this system is literally eating the game alive. It's eating the game alive. It cannot remain like this. This MMR system with inflation based on participation and population, like it absolutely cannot stay like this. There's no shot. There's no shot it can stay like this. Now there are a lot of other things coming to patch 11.1 that are improvements. I think one of the main ones is that there's a very heavy focus on healers and also notably tanks for PvE. The healing and the tank balance needs to be better, because when you have just one tank or one healer dominating Mythic Plus or in PvP, then if groups feel like they can only invite that tank. So you've already got a small pool because the majority of the specs are DPS specs. So when there's only one tank spec or one healer spec that groups feel like they can bring into content, then you're shrinking it even smaller, right? You're going to have like 30 plus DPS specs that are all fighting for the one healing spec. But I will say that they are adding a lot of really cool reworks and tune-ups and adjustments to the healer specializations in the next patch. So hopefully that is going to be the case, because I think that's a really big deal. And then also, if you're a healer and you're in shuffle formats or something like that, and you're not the number one FODM healer and you're fighting against it, it's like, oh my God, it feels like such an uphill battle. You have to try so much harder and you're struggling and you're losing. You're just like, man, I should just be a paladin, or I should just be a priest. So getting the weaker healers up in power is going to help the queue times out like 1,000%. Changing the thresholds on this type of stuff, I think, is going to be really good as well, as far as getting more people to play the game, because these numbers are just totally off. And this is me trying to get like ahead of the horse. I'm trying to get ahead of the horse, trying to get ahead of the tracks. I'm trying to pull the lever. I'm trying to stop the train before it just runs over everybody at the start of season 2, because of the patterns that I've seen with the seasons leading up to this point. So this is kind of just like my assessment of the current situation, my warning, what I would like to have happen in order to stop it, because I've played these games before. I've played these games before. Okay? I've played these games before, and I don't want this to happen again. So if you guys don't want it to happen again, then recommend the video to somebody. Maybe we can make it go viral, get a lot of attention on it, because that seems to be like the best way to get stuff to change, especially when it's at this level, like we've seen with Mythic Plus going forward, because inflation, MMR, and the cutoffs for these rewards, and whether they're bugged or not, like this needs to be dealt with ASAP. And I feel like this has got to be the best time to deal with it, because we're just a couple weeks left of the PTR, where all the attention is on the patch. We're not halfway through the patch, where it's like they're focusing on the next patch type of deal. So like, I'm just trying to drive this home here with this video. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Am I totally off base with this? And other than that, thank you guys very much for watching the video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.